It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. The Detroit Lions improved their record to 9-1 on the season, which is the best start for the franchise since 1934, as the Lions put away the Jacksonville Jaguars 52-6 last Sunday at Ford Field. The Lions will continue their tour of the AFC South as they'll travel to Indianapolis to face the 5-6 Colts this Sunday. We'll look at last week's triumph, preview next Sunday's contest, and more next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Jasinski Drew. We're talking Lions football today on November 21st, Thursday, and I'm talking Lions football with Coach Andy Scheel of the Marine City Mariners. Coach, I should rephrase that, of the regional champion, Division 6 champion, Marine City Mariners. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Drew. For the ninth time in school history, we have won a regional championship. The Mariners are in the Final Four of Division 6, which we've really had a span of a lot of different times in Marine City High School in regards to enrollment. We've won Class B regional championships. We've won Division 3 regional championships. We've won Division 4 regional championships. We've won Division 5 regional championships, and now Division 6 regional championships. So we're going, and we're declining enrollment in old MC, but some things are staying consistent, and I'm very, very lucky to be part of that organization. I'm a small piece to that puzzle, and to all those great coaches and players and their parents and the supporters of that program, and all the past coaches, and some of which still have great influence. And all the support that everybody that really has ever been part of Marine City football, always kind of remains. And, there's an old saying, that, Coach Glodich, really, really resonated in 2013. And it's a big part of the book, Run of the River, and really something that should not be undersold. Could use it this week, honestly, and it's team over talent. And, when you can be part of a great team, it really requires less of you as an individual and more of your effort. And, the harder part of that is swallowing pride and sometimes understanding you may not get the pat on the back. It may go to somewhere else. It may go elsewhere in another direction. But you do need to always understand that the strength of you is the team. The strength of the team is you. And team over talent, baby. And that's what's going to happen at Novi High School, 1 p.m. this Saturday, November the 23rd, when we take on the Jackson Lumen Christi Titans in the Division 6 state semifinal. Winner gets a chance to play Black Friday, 4:30 in Ford Field, and on FanDuel Sports Network.
Wow, that is awesome. So they've already slotted the times for the state championship.
Yeah, we know them. Last year they moved the tournament to Saturday, Sunday, because the Big Ten hosted that blackout game, that Black Friday game between Penn State and Michigan State. That's not taking place this year, fortunately, because really, traditionally it's been Friday, Saturday for the Michigan State championship games. So, it goes it'll go D8, D2, D6, D4 on Friday night, and D7, D1, D5, D3 on Saturday.
It's awesome. It's a great weekend. Hopefully you and the Marine City Mariners are involved in that one too. But good luck this weekend for sure, Coach.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let's talk about another hot team that we like to talk about. How about we talk about the Detroit Lions? Folks, I keep crossing out the dates there. They had their best start since 56. Now, and then it was 54. Well, now we got to go back to 1934. And, Coach, I believe that's the year the Portsmouth Spartans moved to Detroit to become the Detroit Lions. That's their best start, 9-1 in the team's history, folks. And this was the worst defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars had suffered since 1995 when they lost 44-0 to, you guessed it, the Detroit Lions. That was a great offense. The Great Lakes offense. That's right. That was part of that 7-0 run, I believe, to end that season. And to date, that was the last time the Lions had a team that had serious Super Bowl talk around them going into the playoffs. I don't want to talk about what happened to that team in the playoffs in that year because I think I turned the TV off at halftime, Coach. It was not a good situation at all. And this year's going to be very different. But let's talk about the start. 9-1. I mean, we saw the 92 team, or excuse me, 91 team go 6-2. You know, last year we had a great start. I believe they were 6-2 as well, but 9-1. I didn't see that. I saw this team having a very good record, and I picked them to go to the Super Bowl and win it, but I didn't expect 9-1. Coach, talk about that.
Well, you know, it's been remarkable. I mean, I think people were really, really looking at the beginning of the year, and the eyes were kind of wide and wanted to see how this team was going to be just, you know, this what they are. I mean, which has been just absolutely dominant. But at first, it didn't kind of show itself. We kind of had to battle through a weird second half and beat LA in overtime.
Yeah.
And then the next week we came in and our offense just didn't quite seem to be on schedule, and we lost to Tampa. And, you know, there wasn't any concern, but, you know, just who are we here with the Lions? Well, I mean, it's really rendered itself to be quite the product, because it's the same as it ever was. It looks like the 2023 Detroit Lions, but just new and improved, a little deeper, a little bit more, you know, just even more seasoned than they were the prior year. You've had different players kind of elevate themselves in different areas. We have a much stronger secondary than we did in 2023.
Oh, yeah.
And the defense as a whole has grown. For a little chunk of the season now, we have been minus a phenomenal player on our defense, perhaps our best defensive player. I mean, I do think that's a debatable question. And that's not to take anything away from the great Aiden Hutchinson, because we know we're a much, much better football team. He's a cornerstone piece of who we are. But he's not playing right now and hasn't played for quite some time. And have we lost a game since Aiden Hutchinson has gone down by injury? No, we haven't. I think we're up now from points for to points against, well over 100 since. So that means, folks, we've been winning game. If we were playing one game continuously since Aiden Hutchinson's been hurt, we're winning by over 100. That's after he's been hurt. We're doing real well right now. And this team is definitely sight unsound, the deepest, strongest, hungriest, toughest, most united Detroit Lions football team I have ever seen.
Yeah, I don't think it's even close. There's not a weak link on this team.
And we love those 90s teams.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was our era, really. You know, our height, you know, we were just barely in the 90s when we were still in high school. I mean, it was our formative young adult years was the 90s. And we had great football teams, and we had a lot of expectations, and we won some NFC Norths and some NFC Centrals. And you know, those were great. They're nothing even close. Nothing even close to what we've got now.
And I think most fans are understanding now why draft picks are not throwaway toys or caveats in deals. This team, we're not even having this conversation right now, if not for the depth of this team, which was built through the draft by Brad Holmes and his team. But there's no doubt. And that's what's very different about this team, because even those teams in the 90s, we talk about, Coach, yeah, of course they built some through the draft. They made splashier signings in free agency, and they never had the depth. There was always, and I mean, even that, well, if you think about it, even in 93 when Barry Sanders went down, you know, who would have thought Eric Lynch and Derek Moore, you know,
Grand Valley State.
Yeah, but 100-yard games for each of those backs during Sanders' absence. In the last 5 games of that season, they won that NFC championship, and that was the last one they had until last year when they finally won the North again. But it's few and far between when they've had the depth to overcome a major injury, and this Lions team has suffered, no pun intended, too many. Hutchinson, like you mentioned, Coach, that's the big one. He might come back if the Lions make the Super Bowl. I don't say if, I say when they do. I'd like to see Aiden Hutchinson back. That would be awesome. Now, Derek Barnes, Coach, I just was reading today, he's still trying to come back by the end of this year with that knee injury. Hard to say if that'll happen. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the extent of it. Obviously, they're not going to do anything foolish. We trust the staff and the doctors, but he's trying that. So it's a possibility at least. Davenport out with the tricep elbow injury. He's done. Melifonwu, coach, just went back on the IR again, and we don't know what exactly the issue is. It sounds like another injury occurred as he was trying to ramp up the play. And then Anzalone with the broken forearm last week. I was hoping against hope it was pulled out of socket and maybe they could pop that shoulder back in it, and that was not the case. He's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks, coach. He's gonna miss the regular season, but it sounds like Anzalone will probably be back for the playoffs at least. Broderick Martin's been practicing, haven't seen him yet. Now Terrion Arnold's questionable with a groin, although I believe he was a limited participant in practice. And then Jalen Reeves-Maybin is on IR with a neck injury. That's a lot of talent out there, coach. And like you said, though, this team's still 9-1. And since Hutch has been out 100 points better than the opposition, that is a laundry list of injuries and some big names there. Talk about that.
Yeah. And this is football. This is football. At every level, whether you're talking about youth football, whether you're talking about high school football, whether you're talking about college football, professional football, it is truly a team game, and the best teams have developed layers of players that can contribute, and it's just what you have to do. It's a paramilitary exercise in many ways. Football is to depend on one defensive end or one linebacker or one offensive lineman or one wide receiver. Where you usually see people take the risk is at the quarterback position, because there's only one quarterback that usually plays. There's only one quarterback out there at a given time anyway. So, a center can also be a guard or even a tackle in some cases. They can play both. A quarterback's a quarterback. That's the one position you see people take risks, but there's also always a backup quarterback. Sometimes there's three. People get hurt. This is a game where injuries occur. Yeah. So you need to foster and fortify your roster with depth. In some cases, you can't do that just by your draft depth, which the Detroit Lions, through Brad Holmes and that personnel staff and that scouting department, is elite. They are elite as how they fortified this roster and be able to work along Coach Campbell's vision, which is also elite. He a man that truly gets it and understands exactly what he wants and understands every element to the game in regards to what every position and what every slot, whether you're on the kick return team or whatever it might be, is to your organization. He's got a great mind's eye for getting coaches here too. That's besides the point. We're talking about roster spots right now. So what have the Lions done? Well, again, they fortified themselves with draft picks. And that is really how this thing is built. We've talked about it before. We're not going to talk down to anybody. And, I've watched a few other shows, on YouTube where they'll say, I'm not trying to throw shade, but you don't know what you're talking about. Fans basically. And it's just another fan saying their piece. Everyone knows that, hey, the best teams aren't just free agent pieces. This is a salary cap league. You have to draft your team. That's why we have to be patient with Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings. We have to do it this way. We just have to. We are not going to get rich by signing away so much where we then limit our roster to grow and limit our developmental group. You have to develop players and keep them. That's how the NFL works. That's how the Packers have been built. That's how the Patriots were built. That's how the Philadelphia Eagles are built. That's how the Kansas City Chiefs are built. We can go up and down the line. The Baltimore Ravens, that's how they're built. That's how the Pittsburgh Steelers are built. We can go through. We've named basically the most consistent franchises in the NFL, and they are all homegrown, Drew. They're all homegrown. And so what do? We had Zadarius Smith via a trade. Okay, we did trade a little draft capital there to address a spot that Aiden Hutchinson, void was left with because he was such a productive player. Yep. So we did address that. He got one already. I think we're going to see him grow more and more within his role. We have some, when you had your screen up there, we had a lot of linebacker depth that's got dinged, and perhaps our best linebacker and one of the leaders of the defense, Alex Anzalone, went down with that broken forearm right along the Lions sideline. there in the game on. That's the one thing that did not go right at all last Sunday was that injury. And like you said, Barnes, Reeves, Maben, all guys that are hurt. Well, they went out and acquired David Long Jr. from the Miami Dolphins, who was released. And this is a guy that led the Miami Dolphins in tackles with 113 last year. And a guy that is a high caliber physical player. He's a football fan's football player. And that's a guy that you're going to see out there. Roster management is the name of the game in the NFL. And the Lions are doing that in an elite level too.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up David Long because he's going to help. There's no question. You foresee him really making an obviously not this weekend, but Thanksgiving perhaps even against Chicago next week, right?
Yeah, I think to be fair to David Long, because there is going to have to be some concepts that he has to acquire, and hey, there's got to be a little bit of a transition when you're going from one city to another. Your workouts and those kinds of things are limited a little bit. And you're moved in transition, so you want to make sure you got your legs under you and you're in top form that way too. Because we don't need another linebacker getting injured. Yeah. So I do, Drew. I mean, like I said, he's your football fan's football player. If you're a more than just a casual fan of the NFL and someone that's maybe a little bit more, follows the league and follows players and follows other teams and watches a lot of just, game film and games, other games, who David Long Jr. is. He was the defensive player of the year out of the Big 12 for West Virginia in college. He's a heralded guy. He's a two-time All-American, little undersized. So he drifted back in the draft a little bit and was an absolute haymaker for the Tennessee Titans during their real run and dominance under Mike Vrabel when they were winning the NFC South pretty much year in, year out there. He was a staple member of that defense, an absolute ass beater. I mean, a guy was just super physical. He'd just take on a block and make the tackle and put sometimes the blocker into the ball carrier. Just absolutely reckless, violent, tough, physical football player. The fans are going to love him. He's probably getting a little bit hit. I wouldn't want to call him hit drunk.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to demean boxing or fight sports, but I mean, Drew, you only got so many hits in you. You can shape your body however hard you want. I mean, you just run into a brick wall enough, it's going to have its effect. I wonder if that's happening a little bit. We have him for the remainder of the year. It's a wonderful pickup. A lot of fans are on board with this. You're going to watch a lot of other shows, a lot of other, that look great and guys that are just like us, that are heralding, David Long Jr. It's a very underrated, it's not being really talked about too much on the mainstream media. You hit YouTube, there's a million videos of it. So, I mean, folks, he's going to play in that Thanksgiving Day game. People are going to know who he is.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him in a Lions uniform, no doubt. Now, when you look at the Lions, they still have Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez, and they're typically in nickel sets. So typically there's going to be those two guys on the field. So it's the one position group where they were able to absorb a lot of injuries and still be able to put a couple studs out there. And Jack Campbell's a very good linebacker. So is Rodrigo. I mean, I know you don't either. We don't have any issues with him starting. The only reason he didn't is because Derek Barnes distinguished himself and took a giant step forward last year. And then, you draft Campbell and you already had AA. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But Rodrigo's a big part of that team. And they missed him for a couple of weeks there with the ankle. He's back. He looked good last week. Coach, I mean, obviously, like you said, the only thing that went wrong last week is in a 52-6 win over Jacksonville was the Anzalone injury. I mean, it's not like, the score was a blowout, but it's the Lions just were methodical. If I'm not mistaken, they scored touchdowns on their first 7 drives, and then they then they got the field goal on the 8th drive, and that was it.
It was absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, the statistics that offense ran up, Drew. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. It's absolutely stunning. I know that we were looking at the team stats, and the Lions had 38 first downs.
That's insane. That's insane.
38 first downs, 645 yards of offense. That's not including special teams yardage, which was not like, we blew out Tennessee 52-14. So the folks that have paid attendance at Ford Field the last two games have watched 104-20 victories by the Detroit Lions. So, I mean, it's absolutely stunning. And but this one was just, and the defense was brilliant, and Coach Glenn, he's got things super dialed in. Like I said, I mean, he lost his definitely the most talented, most productive player in the front part of his defense. And he's been great. He's been great. Yeah. Dallas didn't score a touchdown. Jacksonville didn't score a touchdown. So, I mean, this is just, phenomenal play. And it goes right from the coaching staff right down through the players, with the defense. But getting back to the offense, Drew, I mean, I got 645 yards and 38 first downs for you. What did you see out of that offense that just made, in all facets, you handle them all, whether in the run game and in the pass receiving game, what you're seeing and what you thought?
Well, once again, efficiency. Jared Goff had fewer incompletions than they had touchdowns again. Now, that was coming off, but let's call it a rough statistic.
Oh, 5 interceptions is not good.
No, it's not good. I mean, if ever there was an asterisk next to a number, that would be 1, but still it wasn't good. And
it's like a starting pitcher giving up 6 earned runs.
Yeah, exactly. But
sometimes they're either, and maybe not all your fault, but like.
Yeah, but then you'll see but
it's ugly, and it's on your hook. Yeah,
it's ugly, but you'll see, hey, no walks, 10 strikeouts, but damn, give up 6. It happens. 5 interceptions, but yet still 300 yards passing and still a victory and still a couple key touchdowns. This game, no such drama. I mean, and quite frankly, we expected the Lions to win this game pretty handily. We said it'd be lovely if they could sit their stars in the fourth quarter, and they were able to do that for the most part. You can't do that at the start of the third quarter once again. And I don't know why people keep questioning Dan Campbell about that. He even flat out says, what are we supposed to do? We have to play football. If you've been a Lions fan for any amount of time, you know that. I mean, you cannot just assume a game's in the bag at halftime. That no way. And quite frankly, they weren't up enough quite yet to do that. I had no problem with what they did and when they finally made the call. I thought actually they would have sat them a series before on offense, but they didn't, and it's okay. But a big win. The running game, just again efficient. Gibbs and Montgomery they're special running backs. There were no turnovers in this game by the Lions, which is a great thing. Receiving wise, St. Brown that's elite Amon-Ra St. Brown right there. That's big game, couple touchdowns, 140 yards receiving, I believe. JMO, you can see what he can do. I mean, that touchdown was beautiful.
11 for 161, 2 touchdowns.
161, yeah. See,
by the way, he was a 4th round draft pick. He was one of those draft picks that we're talking about.
Yes, and and that's also a guy he'll catch, I think, 201 balls off the jugs machine every day after practice, right? Because he knows he's always got to be one better than whoever. He remembers every name of every receiver in order drafted ahead of him. He takes everything he can to use as fuel to motivate himself to be better. And this,
weight room warrior.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And thank his pops for that. And I mean, that's both he and his brother are in the war room with dad all the time working out, and it paid off. And I love an offensive line. What can you say? Penei Sewell on that David Montgomery touchdown. He kicked out and made a great block on the inside, and then he was able to roll up straight forward and just shove Montgomery into the end zone. I mean, he literally shoved 3 guys in the end zone. Penei Sewell is an amazing football player. I mean, we were happy he fell to them, and he did fall to them. When they got him.
I was absolutely when I saw that 4th pick or that 5th pick.
Mm-hmm.
I think we redrafted 6th. I think we had redrafted. Was it 5th or 6th? We drafted him.
7th actually.
7th. Yeah, we're 7th. When I saw that 6th pick, I mean, this is a Miguel Cabrera, Nicholas Lidstrom type player here. It's the best at his craft and at his spot in the league. He is that is, and I'll debate anybody because, you know, we can carry over the skill position statistics and what they mean and those kinds of things. That's the best player on the Detroit Lions. He's the best. He is player one, is Penei Sewell. His ability, and I don't know if you move him when it's time to say goodbye to Taylor Decker. I don't know.
You know,
I think the Lions are becoming right-handed, and we have the ability then to do some different things in and out. You know, we can you know, attack on the run from the left a little bit more. You know, we've just his ability to get out in front and screens and flares to his right is amazing. You know, it kind of double sets the pocket, which for a player of Jared Goff's like type, you know, a processing quarterback rather than a play live quarterback that's, you know, Lamar Jackson, you know, moving around, Pat Mahomes type. He's a process quarterback. He's a Brady Manning style quarterback.
Yeah,
and it gives so many values to the offense. Penei Sewell's the best player on the team, Drew.
Coach,
in this guy's estimation.
Well, I'm gonna back you on that, and I trust your judgment. I want to ask you though. I mean, obviously, guards pull all the time. Tackles don't always do that. Penei Sewell pulls quite often. That's not easy for a 335-pound man to pull from the right side all the way to the left and lead block. How's that? That's a special athlete right there. And that's what you can't, you don't have a statistic to back it. And I get what you're saying. Yeah, the skilled players have the stats, but when you can see a tackle that not just once in a while, I mean, you're talking multiple times a game can pull like that, Coach, that's got to take a hell of a lot. Talk about that.
We're not just seeing like gap zone blocking schemes, which really became posh in the 90s and the early part of the 21st century, the 2000s, and really even into the early parts of the 2010s. You started seeing more of the zone power look where you're getting the down kick action, which, you know, I'm not trying to get football speak with you there, but that's when you see the pulling. And yes, in football, we're starting to see much more diversity in who pulls. And there's a lot of concepts now that you, instead of, you know, having both guards pull on a sweep, that you would have the whole backside pull on a sweep, or even sometimes the center in some cases. But Penei Sewell is an amazing mover. You know, he's a guy that, I mean, you know, perhaps, you know, later in his career, because he's so young too. We have to, he's 20, I think going to be 24 years old this season. So, I mean, this is a guy, if he can keep his, I mean, you know, and that may mean he wears down a little bit younger too, but he's a guy that could, you know, because he's so elite, he could convert age 29, 30, 31, 32 into a guard. You know, and kind of go the way of a Kevin Zeitler. Kevin Zeitler's 34 years old.
Having a hell of a year, too.
You know, and I think Pro Football Focus is one of the best right guards in the game this year.
Yes.
So, I mean, he once again, and I know we're making this the Penei Sewell love fest here, but it's that unit of Sewell, Zeitler, Ragnow, Graham Glasgow, and then Taylor Decker when he's healthy. And, you know, and Dan Skipper, thanks for filling in, man. You know, you're part of an ass beating on Sunday. But Graham Glasgow worked his ass off on Sunday. He didn't come out. He was out there because the Lions were dinged on the offensive line. He had no Taylor Decker, our starting left tackle, long time left tackle.
Well, he ended up playing last week when Laporta ended up sitting, which surprised us, actually. That's what kind of a surprise.
But, you know, but Graham Glasgow never came out.
Nope,
they did get Decker out of there. They got to get Sewell out of there. You know, you got to get Zeitler out of there. I mean, just of his age protected a little bit. And Frank is banged up. And he very physical. It's tough on him. He got him out of there. We didn't have room to pull out every O lineman. Glasgow stayed in. He came off that field. He played the whole time. And I tell you what, Hendon Hooker came in and had a drive.
Mm-hmm. He looked good.
He's 3 for 4, and then he was throwing the football downfield. He connected on a couple pretty passes, So I mean, Graham Glasgow played a lot of football, and that's an underrated guy, probably the most unsung member of those 5, starting offensive linemen. So I mean, that group, is just the feature of this team, in my estimation. Drew, what's another, and I know we've been talking a lot of offense. Let's continue to talk about it, though, for a few more minutes. Okay, I talked about the offensive line. What's a position group that you are just very impressed by so far?
On the offensive side of the ball, well, the tight ends stand out. And when Sam Laporta not playing, I was concerned, but I didn't think the Lions were in jeopardy of losing this football game against Jacksonville, who was banged up on their end as well. And they don't have the depth that Detroit has. But Brock Wright, Shane Zylstra, they did a nice job. Brock Wright's having a great and I know fans were pretty happy that even though he had signed that offer sheet with the Niners, the Lions matched it, which was a little bit of a surprise. Didn't break the bank, but $3.4 million annually. It's like, okay, Brock Wright's paying dividends. Brock Wright's ability to block. Brock Wright has become a much better. He was a timely pass catcher in the past. Now he's become a pretty reliable pass catcher. He's a good tight end. He's
up there for the tight end 2 of the league. It is the best tight end 2 in the league. I mean, there's other guys too.
He's in that conversation.
He's in that conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, and seeing Hendon Hooker look the part. In the preseason, it's hard to judge because you're running vanilla offenses. He ran a lot, and you expected that, but he didn't do that in this game. And I know, again, it's not like he was playing the against all the ones on Jacksonville either. But I liked his poise in the pocket. He threw a nice ball. He was on target, like you said. He was 3 for 4 in limited action, but nonetheless, that helps a lot because and even still this year, Jared Goff's the one guy you can ill afford to lose at all. I mean, no knock on Hooker. He's just doesn't have that seasoning yet, so, but yeah, the tight end position really has impressed me, Coach. And now getting Laporta back, it sounds like he's on track to play this week. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree with you. It's an extremely important position group on this team because of how we play and what we do. I think the wide receivers, I think the wide receivers have been fantastic. That it was a position of concern at times last year. Amon-Ra St. Brown is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is another one of the base members of this team. You put in Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Aiden Hutchinson, these type of players are kind of and Jared Goff, those 4, are kind of like, foundational faces, if you will, that are from this organization, from this team and where things are at right now. JMO, his play has emerged. I mean, we worry about him and his maturity and his decision making and those kinds of things. That's a work in progress still. But as 50-year-old men, we can relate to what it's like to be a 23-year-old young man too. And and maybe it looked a little different for us, but not really. I mean, just in our preceptive culture in Kalamazoo, Michigan at the time, not as a millionaire living in Detroit. So I mean, it does look a little different for him than it did for us. But nonetheless, I think some of our thinking processes were not dissimilar.
That's fair.
And we need to keep and anyone that's just a human being that can have an ounce of humility and look back at maybe what they were at one other time in their life, can maybe look at JMO and have a little empathy towards a young guy that him and Kirby Joseph were handing out frozen turkeys in the community.
Yeah,
by 6 o'clock.
Yeah,
the game ended at 4.
That was awesome.
I mean, so he's a man with a heart, and he's a huge Pistons fan, and a huge Red Wings fan, and a huge Tigers fan, and and forever how long we have JMO, this will be Planet JMO's time in Detroit, but he's made a big difference, and Okay, we lost Reynolds. Reynolds was great. In a lot of different ways. He was very important to what we were and what we were developing and doing. In a sense, even though they both were free agent signings, he signed away with Denver. We get Tim Patrick off of waivers once again, kind of like how we're talking about David Long here just a little bit ago. Mm-hmm. And he's paying dividends. He's really starting to become that Reynolds guy.
He is.
So, I mean, hey, and I'm not trying to exclude, we've talked at length about Jared Goff, and there will be plenty of opportunities for us to talk about the running backs who are just, really maybe, and again, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are two more faces of this franchise. But Drew, we got to talk about defense too, man. We got to talk about defense, and we got to go, we want to look at the ledger sheet, if you will. The Lions had 645 total yards of offense, 449 through the air, 196 on the ground for that total of 645. The Jacksonville Jaguars and Duval, 129 through the air, 41 on the ground for 170 total yards.
That's stingy.
We had multiple players that had more yardage than that, Drew. That defense did a number on the old Jags too. It wasn't just that we were scoring on 7 straight offensive possessions. We were burying those guys and getting the football back and doing all sorts of things out there. What did you talk some defense, Drew? What did you see that really stood out to you?
To summarize, this is, in my view, a 7-3, 6-4 team that is 9-1 because this defense is markedly better than many of us thought they would be. We thought they'd be solid and improved, certainly in the secondary. We didn't realize how improved. And like you said, you brought that up. Terry and Arnold is getting better and better and better every week. The depth is scary, but Aleem McNeil has had a phenomenal season. He had a great game. DJ Reader keeps coming out there every week, getting push up the middle. You don't hear about him every game. He's just rock solid next to McNeil. And you get Zadarius Smith in there. It was nice to see him get that sack with Jack Campbell. That was awesome. And that was like the icing on the cake for that game. But Brian Branch is setting the tone. And when you talk about who the best player on that defense is, it's a tough vote, but Brian Branch has my vote. That guy is one of the most sure tacklers in the NFL. He's explosive. He hits with purpose. He scares me when he leads with his head like that because I start getting Louis Delmas flashbacks a lot, Coach. Remember that name from Western Michigan. Great player. But and much like Bob Sanders, the former Colts safety, they were great players, but man, too many.
They hit themselves off of the league.
Yes,
and that's a real thing.
And that worries me about Branch. Yeah, Ernie Sims. Yeah, oh yeah, and he came into the league with kind of that reputation already. Yeah,
very good positional coach now. In football.
Yes, exactly. So, but I mean, just all around the way they've been able to adjust because they play. It's known now. The announcers are saying, yeah, the Lions are going to be an aggressive man defense. They were not an aggressive man defense last year. They weren't an aggressive man defense in the first 2 games of this season. That came about in the 3rd week against the Cardinals. They switched the game plan up. It was beautiful. And it's like, hey, this worked against Kyler Murray, against a very good Arizona team. Let's keep going with this because we got to face a Jordan Love. We got to face a CJ Stroud, etc. Well, and Dak Prescott. Guess what? It's still working. And Carlton Davis, cannot say enough about him. I mean, my goodness. The upgrades in the secondary and the depth on that defense, it's a beautiful thing, Coach. And they did what you would hope they would have done. But that doesn't always happen in the NFL. It doesn't matter. Yeah, Mac Jones is quarterback. Well, in the past, the Lions made legends out of backup quarterbacks. Ask Matt Flynn. I heard he still sends thank you Christmas cards to Matt Millen every year. Thank you. He made me a millionaire. I don't know if that's true. I did hear that though. Yeah, I mean, it was like, oh my God, you face Justin Fields, like, oh, I guess Jim McMahon suited up again from 1985 every year. Not this year. You're not seeing that. And that's a huge difference. I can't say enough. I think I named every player in the defense almost. I mean, I just can't. I'm gushing about them. They're still getting pressure. They're not getting a ton of sets. They're still getting the pressures. They're ball hawks. They're getting the INTs. Kirby Joseph is 7 picks now in the season. Man, I mean, that's a great number for a full season. We got a lot of football left to play here. I don't, Coach. If I left anything out, I apologize. But man, they were awesome on defense. They did everything you need to do.
Well, yeah, they have too, and it's not about postseason awards. When you're talking about a team defense, because there are so many players that go unsung, and they are so unheralded, and they are going to be the reason we win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
if we win, it will not be because Jared Goff went perfect, or had some sort of crazy QBR that he's been putting up week in, week out. It won't be because Amon-Ra has 12 receptions. It won't be because Montgomery and Gibbs both get 100. It's going to be because the defense took care of business when they held someone down, like they did against the Houston Texans. Like they did. That's going to happen in our offense. Our offense is going to be slowed down a little bit at times.
Sure.
And they answer the bell every time. Every time. You have defensive backs that are as active in the run game as they are in the pass game. We haven't seen probably plays on the ball like this. I think you have to go back to the early 90s when we were talking with Ray Crockett, William White, the late William White, Benny Blades, Melvin Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
You have to almost go back into that era, in my opinion. Okay, I know Dre Bly made some plays and was an all-pro corner here, and some things like Louis Delmas was a lot of fun to watch. But I think you have to almost go back to that era to get anything close to what we have right now, and this is elite. I mean, the Lions have had arguably 2 defensive most valuable player candidates. One of them got hurt in Dallas, and he was really surging towards being that guy. Brian Branch is going to be a considerate.
Yeah,
he is going to be a considerate. And I think we have the 2 all-pro, not just Pro Bowl safeties. I think we have 2 all-pro safeties right now.
Yeah.
And it goes without saying. I think, in my mind's eye, if I had a favorite player on the defense this year, it is Carlton Davis. And he is so underrated. And thank goodness we have him. We believe we have him for one more after this. I mean, he is huge out there in what he brings to the table. And Terrion Arnold's getting better every week. Yes, he had a non-competitive thrower, and I know I am not impressed by Mac Jones. I am not. I think he'll be working for the SEC network soon enough. And I'm not trying to be an asshole by saying that. I'm just he does not have it for this. It's just not there. It's not competitive enough of a thrower. And his throwaways happen way too often, way too fast. And he does not put in a 50-50 opportunity for a talented wide receiver. And Brian Thomas was the one guy that got a couple of looks last week because he's legit. He's a good football player.
Oh yeah, we liked him in the draft.
And Evan Ingram's a big, tall tight end threat. Again, just not competitive towards there. So yeah, that helps a guy like Terrion, do his thing. And he's a very physical guy at that. And we've got some depth and some youth back there too, on this rake of straw that's going to start to develop and do some things. Make Robertson.
He's having a good year.
Yes, absolutely. And he gets, he's probably undervalued. I mentioned him late. He really is a starter. And he's physical and tough and sticks his nose and is going to be the first of the fight. He's a guy you want going down the alley with. So, that position group, and I guess I'm already kind of got going on the position groups a little bit myself.
Hey.
But defense wins championships, Drew. Defense wins championships. That is what's going to win for the Detroit Lions the ultimate prize, which is that Lombardi Trophy. Drew, 52-6. It was a good old-fashioned ass whooping.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, we were on to yet another AFC South team. And this time we have to go to the house of the NFL Combine.
Ooh. Ford
Lucas
Field
Oil
South.
Stadium, which I heard is in beautiful downtown Indianapolis. Very fun place to visit, from what I've been told. It's great, just right down there. It's just awesome. But we got some business. It's a business trip for the Lions. Heading down to take on the 5-6 Colts, Drew. Give us a little preview, my friend. Talk us into this thing.
All right. Well, we've talked a lot about the Lion offense. We know what they do. So what are they going to be facing, right? They're going to be facing a familiar face, Kwity Paye. A lot of folks around Ann Arbor and around the Big Ten ought to know that name. He's leading this team with 5.5 sacks this year. DeForest Buckner, another guy on the D line, 3.5 sacks. Grover Stewart and Deo Ajingbo, he has 3 sacks as well. That's their starting front four right there. So their front four is very good in Indy. They get pressure. They're pretty solid against the run. Not great, but they're solid, and they do get some pressure. They've got 8. The thing is with the Colts, and we talked about this off the air a little bit before we started, Coach, and they played their 5-6 Lions are 9-1, so they haven't had their bye week yet. Yet the Lions have outscored them by 100 points this year already, and defensively they've allowed 83 fewer points than the Colts in one and obviously one less game. So the Colts have been what they are. They're a 500 team. They score a decent amount of points, but they've been giving up a little bit too many. Offensively, we'll get into that, but on the defensive side of the football, they're a tough defense. They're a pretty fast defense. Their DC is Gus Bradley. And that's a good DC. They're an aggressive defense, Coach. And I know you know about him, but I'd like to know your thoughts on how they scheme a little bit and what Detroit's going to have to watch out for.
Well, from the defensive perspective, since we've been talking about them for a little bit here, and probably not enough, but what we've got to be able to deal with on defense is another dynamic athlete at quarterback, a dual threat extraordinaire. I think there's a lot of intrigue into Anthony Richardson when he was originally drafted. I think, maybe more of the conservative-minded football guys, and I probably fall into this category, wondered a little bit like, this is a little too much too soon. He wasn't seasoned very much when he was over in Gainesville. He didn't play very long there, and he showed a lot of raw mistakes when he played for the Florida Gators. And a lot of amazing football plays too. Well, he's been much more amazing than he has been cringy for the Indianapolis Colts. He's a fine quarterback, and there's no doubt what they want to do inside the 10-yard line, and that's run Anthony Richardson into the end zone for a touchdown. And running quarterbacks, I tell you what, in this league, it's tough to just bundle up a quarterback when you can be charged with hitting them late so easily. So that is going to be a pain in the butt for the Lions. They're going to have to defend. It's probably the most mobile quarterback. I mean, we got lucky with Jordan Love. He was dinged up. He was limp. He was limping around and couldn't quite be who he normally is. C.J. Stroud didn't use those elements to his game too much in the Houston game. Probably got to go back to Kyler Murray, to the most probably effective mobile quarterback that the Lions have seen this year in the regular season. And, that is going to be an interesting stop for us. He had a touchdown through the air. I think he was 20 for 30. If I'm not mistaken, he was 20 for 30 for 272 yards and a touchdown, 10 for 32 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He scored 3 touchdowns. He's a touchdown collector for that group. That is something that they're going to have to be taking care. They take care of business. Jonathan Taylor, we know this is one of the better running backs in the NFL. Quentin Nelson in that group is a offensive line, but the Lions are defending the run something fierce. So yeah, we're going to have to really defend the run a lot more urgency and a lot more threat, I think, this week than we saw week prior against the Jags. So that right then and there is where I'm going to take things. But Drew, talk about that Indianapolis defense. You mentioned Kwity Paye a little bit. What do you see as a concern? Are we going to have a hard time? They gave up 91 rush yards, I want to say, to the New York Jets in that 28-27 victory last week. What do you see out of that Indianapolis defense that's got you thinking that we've got to be ready for?
Well, that they're aggressive, and they do know how to find the quarterback. So, I I don't want to sound flippant towards the Colts. They're a solid team, and this is going to be a closer game than I think folks will really want, in my view. We'll talk about that shortly, but the Lions, I don't think the Lions have to schematically do anything different to avoid anything. I think the Lions are just going to have to be super efficient again. I guess it's been winning football games. I'm not saying Jared Goff has to have fewer than 4 incompletions. No, but again, no turnovers. The old line, you name Zeitler, Ragnow, and Sewell. Those 3 guys right now are all ranked in the top 4 at their position, each of them in Pro Football Focus right now. And Decker and Glasgow are still well thought of as well. To me, if the Lions do their thing in the trenches on both sides of the football, the Lions will have control of this football game. Now, I wouldn't say the Colts aren't exactly. I wouldn't say they're ball hawks. Again, they've done some good things. They've generated some turnovers on defense. They've been able to get some picks. But they've had 13 fumbles, so they've coughed the ball. The Lions have only had 7 all year, fumbles lost. The Colts have had 13. Now they have an extra game still, but obviously they put the ball on the turf at least once a game. So you're going to get probably a couple turnovers out of the Colts if the Lions can protect the football the way they've typically been able to do. With the 5 of Goff's 9 interceptions on the year came against Houston. So other than the Houston game, he's only thrown 4 interceptions the entire year. And they won that 5 interception game. So it's do what you do best, do it efficiently, win the clock, control the game, time of possession, control the turnover battle. And I think that good things will happen then. It's a solid defensive line, coach, but I think our offensive line can handle that.
You mentioned, as we get here towards the end, but, just winding things down with this episode, you had mentioned earlier in conversation how close their games have been this year. -1 loss. They lost by 10 to
Buffalo,
one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah.
That's in the same mention as the Detroit Lions at the top of the league. They lost to them by 10. Everything else was inside of a score. Talk about that too.
Yes, every game's been a single-digit game, win or lose, except for that Buffalo game. Okay. Yeah, and realistically, I mean, they beat Pittsburgh 27-24. That's a 2-loss team on the season right now. They've lost twice to Houston, coach, by a combined 5 points. That's a good football team. We know that.
And that's a comparative victory. We beat Houston by a razor-thin margin. So. Yeah. That kind of goes to show you the kind of football that the Colts are playing. I 100%.
Hey, they went to Lambeau. They lost to Green Bay 16-10. It's a close game. They did lose at Jacksonville. Now, mind you, that was with Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk, 37-34. They've had some unrest at quarterback a bit. Joe Flacco came in, and he played pretty well. Richardson's 4-3 on the season as the starter. And obviously, like you talked about, coach, he's got 274 rushing yards, and he averages almost 5.5 a game. Taylor with the 633 yards. I mean, that's where their bread and butter is. They're going to run the football. But when Flacco was in there, check this out, coach. Alec Pierce, 590 yards receiving. Josh Downs, 567. Michael Pittman Jr., 412. They're a very solid football team. And that's why they're never out of a football game. But again, they're pesky. But I think what they lack is just another. Richardson needs this season under his belt, and if he can keep improving, they're going to be tough. They're going to be scary next year. Scary good next year. Right now, still a learning curve for the young man, and I think that's going to be a difference. But yeah, they're never out of a football game, coach. I mean, it's coaching as long as you have. I mean, anytime you can have a game, within single digits, you've got a shot, and they have a shot in every game.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I see it as we say goodbye. The 2024 Detroit Lions say goodbye to the AFC South. This will be our final AFC South opponent for the year. We've got them all in this before Thanksgiving.
3 in a row.
Yeah, and 3 of them in a row. Which is really, 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 really odd. But, getting back to it, I think, where do we fall in line in this game? I think they're going to have a little more success scoring the football on us a little bit than maybe we were, or maybe Jacksonville did, or maybe than Tennessee did. I think they're going to get 21 points. That being said, I see another 10-point victory. I see Detroit, doing their thing and processing 4 touchdowns and getting, and Jake Bates knocking one through the uprights. Detroit 31, Indianapolis 21, heading into Thanksgiving for a 10-1 start and the greatest start in NFL and Detroit Lions history.
I'm pretty close to where you're at right there, Coach. I had 33-20. That's how I see this one, 33-20. I think it'll be a pretty close game. I see it as being a single score game at the half. But I don't believe the Lions will. They're always going to be in control. But they're only going to be one series ahead. So, again, the turnovers are going to be the key. If they can protect the football the way they've done pretty much all season, realistically, I mean, everything's gone right, with the exception of injuries. But a lot of teams have been decimated by injuries, and they've fallen off the wagon. I mean, Tampa Bay beat Detroit in week 2. They got a rash of injuries. Now they're sub 500. Still a good football team. The Rams were the same thing. They gave Detroit hell in week 1. They got hit with a rash of injuries. They finally got back to 500. The Niners, same thing.
It might be a lost year there. I mean, just with the emergence of the Lions and the NFC North, with the Vikes and the Packers still not going anywhere, and then you've got the Philadelphia Eagles, who are an absolute great football team.
Oh yeah,
they truly are, and they're very, very good. And you have a lot of parity in the NFC West. And the Rams really do seem to kind of be poised to maybe take control of that thing, because they're kind of getting their feet under them, and they are a good football team.
Yeah, they're good.
This may be a lost year for the Niners. They're phenomenal, but it just the injuries, they just may have gotten too deep and behind things.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, Coach, no doubt. And they just got McCaffrey back, and then they lost Kittle again, and he might not be back for this game. And they're playing at Lambeau, I believe, this weekend. So that's what a conflicting game if you're a Lions fan there. I mean, you hate Green Bay, but, would you rather the Niners?
I'd rather have the Niners win because we want to get that NFC North locked down.
And this is why, everyone talks about must-win games or games you really got to have. And, to make the playoffs, this is not a must-win game for the Lions. But if you want to make the Super Bowl, well, you probably need to win this game because Green Bay's likely going to win that game. They're going to be Minnesota. Let me see who they're playing. I'm looking. They're at Chicago. They're probably winning that game. They're going to be right on your heels still. And they've got a head-to-head with Detroit at the end of the season. That game could be a huge football game. So you're right. For Green Bay to lose would be outstanding. Yeah, it would bring the Niners a little closer. But, I mean, honestly, if you're the Detroit Lions, I don't think you fear anybody. But you certainly got to respect everybody, right? It's respect all. That's a Marine City slogan, right? Respect all, fear none. But it's true. It's true. But, yeah, it's just that the Lions have weathered the storm better than any other team in the league. The Eagles started out similarly. They started out a little slow, and like you said, they're a damn good football team. They're right back there. They're 8-2. It's gonna be a fun second half of the season, and the Lions are going to be a very, very, very high pick right now. They're the odds-on favorite to win it. Well, week by week, take it week by week, and but Coach, we're gonna wrap this one up here. Any closing thoughts on this game against the Colts?
Go Lions, go Mariners. And happy early Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, definitely. I echo all those sentiments, and I will probably come out with something a little sooner, maybe as soon as next Monday, to give a little preview of that Chicago Thanksgiving game. It's funny, people always, fans will say to me, aren't Lions fans, Detroit always wins on Thanksgiving. I'm like, no, they don't. They always play on Thanksgiving. Don't always win. They're going to win this time. But thank you, Coach. Good luck Saturday against Jacksonville and Christie. state semifinals, Division 6. That's 1 p.m. at Novi High School. That's going to be a fun one, and hopefully we're talking a little bit more next week. But let's take Lumen Christi. Let's take the Colts and Indy. Thanks, folks, for subscribing. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to catch us on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page. Check out the banner. It's been rolling across the screen the whole time. We're on the Roku channel for the ESEN network every Saturday night at 7 p.m. For Coach Andy Shield, Marine City Mariners, my name is Drew. Take care, everybody. Thank you for watching, and we will talk to you next week. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode at the Sports Peninsula Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter X. Just look for @SportsP Podcast, and follow us to keep up on sports around the great state of Michigan and beyond. You can also catch our show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. on the ESEN Network channel as part of Roku. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.